We're back. It's our last one of the day.
I know, it's gone so fast. I can't believe it.
It really has. It's funny doing these. I do feel like I'm like at a physical event. It's so much. I just feel like I'm following everything, and it just goes to show that if you actually share stuff as it happens, it really immerses you in it.
Yeah, and it's lovely as well because not only just are we having engagement here with speakers, and we're actually on our own time as well, whilst we're not doing these lives, we're engaging with the conference, but then also by the social networks. So you've got lovely engagement from all the different participants, and then also other people saying what they love, and just a really lovely sharing aspect today, which is great.
It is, and we've had so many people wanting to join these as well. So we're now quite full for the week, and hopefully we'll get a few more guests on across the sessions. But I think we're going to have to make it wider than just one or two guests to fit everybody in, which is lovely.
Yeah, well, that's exciting.
And yeah, without any further ado, let's welcome Catherine into the stream. Hello, Catherine.
Hiya, thank you for having me.
Good to have you here, and you're joining us from Sheffield today, I believe.
Yes, from my student house in Sheffield.
Oh, student house, that's
great.
Yeah,
everything's really good. Yeah, so the Wi-Fi is a bit sketchy, so hopefully that will be fine. But yeah, everything's good. Yeah, everything's fine. Thanks for having me again.
We're used to dodgy Wi-Fi, aren't we, Anna?
Oh yes, it's something that we've all become accustomed to, hasn't it, over the last year and a half. It's okay. You're hanging in there, so yeah, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry.
And actually, I remember when everything sort of began with lockdown, with all the home learning across all levels of education, you know, there's so much around sort of digital poverty, and that's come up quite a bit in the sessions already today, where, you know, inclusivity is reliant on technological access, and then, you know, that's just a starting point for people, and so much change needs to happen on those sort of infrastructural levels. But you're joining us after you're in the middle of completing a master's degree in science communication, aren't you, Anna? Aren't you? Sorry, Catherine.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of doing my final project, which is about using art and poetry to get people to engage with their local environments and to educate them about the threats that their local bird life faces. So that's what I'm in the middle of doing right now. So making like anthologies and animations and just exciting and interesting things for school children and just people in the community to watch and use over the summer.
Well, that's really interesting. I'd love to see some of this. I'll have to have a little nosy afterwards. But I think that's just great because, you know, I think it's really difficult. I think another thing that just was picked up on one of the other sessions actually is that, again, you know, we're talking in terms of scientific realms and what we do in fields as scientists. However, it's really interesting that obviously, you know, that sort of is a barrier for lots of other people because they might not be in education. So being able to make things accessible through knowledge and through just passing information is really important. And you can do that with art because it transcends everything. You don't need to have words in a way to be able to understand or experience something. So actually it's really fascinating what you're doing.
So tell us a bit more about it, Catherine. How far have you got? What was been the process for that research?
Well, so it's a project called For Every Bird a Nest, which is like a play off the Emily Dickinson poem, which is hope is the thing with feathers, I think. Grief is the thing with feathers. I can't remember. It's an Emily Dickinson poem. And so, yeah, there's the birds in Lincolnshire are really struggling from reproductive failure at the moment for various reasons, like disturbance and fragmentation. And the salt marshes that are the important breeding grounds also home this really quirky like domestication of land called the Fitties, which is like a community of people that kind of live slightly on the margin of like the main town, and they're both struggling with the same issues, which is fragmentation, flooding. Like the birds are struggling with the flooding and the people living there are as well. So the project's basically trying to get the people that live there to look out for the wildlife and understand the threats that they face so that they can feel mobilized to help or to like do what they can. So like dog walking is a big issue, little things like that. Because I think science and art is often taught as like a dichotomy, like two really separate things, when actually I think they overlap quite a lot because it's all about attention to detail and like trying to understand the world around you. So I just think it's a really nice way of making science, which is often quite complicated and distant and like often overwhelming if it's to do with climate change, just making it more accessible for people and making people feel less intimidated by it.
Yes, I know, and I think it's finding somewhere to start, isn't it? And by doing something like this and having that engagement with communities, because it's strange, isn't it? When we watch the news, we often forget that that news is happening somewhere in reality, somewhere in the world, but it's only news normally when it's news happening to us. So because when it is, and when you're having that kind of engagement like there, you're saying it's impacting the locals and it's impacting the bird life. So they have that connection already. It's there and it's integral to that community structure. So being able to, being able to engage those people with that and also making it accessible is really key.
Definitely.
So have you attended the previous session I just saw one that was on engagement and participation. Were you in that one too, Catherine?
Yeah, I was. I really liked the bit about theatre, using theatre to get people to engage with democracy. Just things like that, I think, can be really useful, because I did an undergraduate in biology and I wasn't even aware of that science policy interface really, and I was studying science. So I feel like there's such a lack of kind of communication between like the small community of people that understand science and policy and the general public who are affected by it, especially because it's all good doing science in a lab, but you need that like communication with policymakers to make anything actually happen. So I think for COP26 to be happening this year is kind of a weirdly great opportunity for this government, because the pandemic's been so horrible that people have kind of turned to nature. People, like, I definitely went out into nature more, and like people were able to reevaluate priorities, I think. So, and like the young people are really vocal now, obviously with all the strikes and stuff, and I feel like they think it's an intergenerational like injustice. And because COP26 is happening here now, I just feel like the government can commit to like actually listening to people and can just prove that they are listening and that they're not just ignoring all these young people that feel kind of left behind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's partly what this event's all about. Climate Expo is, of course, a partnership between research and educational institutions, with the COP26 universities being, I think, quite an unprecedented community of people that are trying to do more than previous years to actually bring this to public attention. And I know, Annie, you do lots of volunteering work, and I guess do you see that there is a sort of groundswell of people that want to make major commitments? I saw in one of the presentations that people want to make commitments, but they need to be helped and enabled and empowered to do so.
Yeah, I think that was one thing actually that came up in one of the previous sessions in terms of inclusivity and engaging people. And actually, at the same point, really, is that, we have to make things more inclusive. It can't just be within the realms of science and it not filter down. And having that education is really key. And starting as well with younger children. And also, we can't wait until they get to university level before we start bringing in kind of climate strategies and also kind of just involving them in these key kind of principles around climate issues at such a late stage, because it's a bit too late then. So starting when they're a lot younger is a great opportunity, really. What's not fun about being outside and enjoying things and being, getting covered in mud and all that? It's great when you're a kid, and like we shouldn't lose that wonderful sense of magic that we have and connection with nature and just leave it to go by the wayside. It would be nice for it to continue.
I mean, it makes me wonder, Catherine, what are the age groups you've been working with your project?
So initially it was going to be just community based, so like on the beaches, just where the salt marshes are, but we're going to send ID guides into schools, so it's like GCSE level, when they're kind of learning about poetry and learning about analysing poetry. And I feel like even compared to when I was that age, which was only like 6 years ago, young people seem so much more clued up about these issues now. And like at the strikes, there's loads of young people that will miss school and go to the strikes, and when they get interviewed, they're really coherent and they understand the problems. So I feel like going in at that age where they're kind of learning about the issues and also seem to care a lot about the issues, it's a good way of like inspiring the next generation of people to do what they can to help the environment.
Yeah, definitely. And are you someone that goes out on protests and activism? Is that part of your sort of day-to-day?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I do enjoy it. Like, it's a nice place to meet people that are similar as well. And especially at Sheffield, there's so many, like, it's one of the biggest students' unions in like the country. So there's just loads of protests all the time, so it's great.
I mean, I've been lucky enough to go to Sheffield Doc Fest a few years in a row, and that's just so much great documentary that's shown there that's all about sort of climate concern.
Yeah, I can imagine. They've got loads of stuff going on, and it's one of the biggest like sustainability unis for sustainable food and stuff, so there's always things happening, which is really nice to get involved with. Yeah, but I just think now the young people are so educated about it compared to maybe me and you guys when you were that age. So it's really important to keep the momentum going and to get them to actually follow through and like look into COP26 and like these really pivotal moments.
Yes, definitely. I the earlier, like I said, the better. And a lot of them are really clued up. I go to lots of events outside of this, so it's, you know, really lovely to see a much younger generation, you know, than pre-university, and they are so clued up, and some of them are specialists and they're only like 14 years old or 11 years old, and you know, I find that quite amazing really in itself, that these younger people already have such a breadth of knowledge about a species, or you know, something in their neighborhood, or like the history behind something, and they're really passionate. And what's lovely is that those communities, through online and social, you know, get-togethers, because we haven't been able to get together properly or go out and do things together, they have enabled those younger audiences to really come forward and also just engage with one another and make new friends and new communities of other people who are into that strange wiggly worm that they're into. And you know, it's just really, it's been really adaptive, I think, this whole process, obviously through the awfulness of everything that we've experienced. But you know, I think that key sense of education, you know, getting kids back into school after the COVID-19 pandemic sort of slowly fades off, hopefully, you know, it's just going to be really key to getting them back into like a catapult and like letting them go again into this wonderful world of information and excitement, which it can be for everyone if we keep, you know, applying it in a really insensitive ways, because it's also a cultural issue for many communities, but just keep engaging people and just keep talking and keep discussing things and keep looking at what solutions there might be to problems are really important.
I mean, I thought one of the powerful things in that session, Catherine, I don't know about you, but a lot of the speakers spoke about artistic practice and participatory arts, especially, as central to sort of participatory democracy. Is that a sort of vision that you see as critical here? And also just thinking about bringing new imagination into finding solutions.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like art is a lot of a less intimidating environment for people, and like people feel like they can do it, like they can draw a bird, they can write a poem about a bird. But science is so intimidating, I find, especially at the level of climate change where it's so complicated and like even the experts don't agree about things, so it's kind of hard to stay in the know about all that complicated climate change research. But I think focusing on what's directly around you, your environment, your local parks, like getting clued up about sustainability in your area or biodiversity in your area is a really good place to start, because it's more tangible and you can see the changes happening around you. So I just think it's a nice segue into maybe moving into the more complicated stuff.
Definitely. And speaking of what's around us, it's 3 o'clock already, so the next sessions are about to start. So thanks so much again for joining us, Catherine. Really great to have you here, and look forward to seeing how your work develops, especially bringing the poetry into wider communities. So thanks for being here, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you soon, Anna.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.